Yes, it's a rough old coast, isn't it, when it blows?
Oh, I tell you.
I see down there they're building a new lugger, or they're fixing up an old one perhaps down on the slips now. There's a lugger up on the slips.
An old one? Oh, I don't think.
Well, I don't know whether it's an old one or whether they're building a new one.
Building a new one, yeah.
Well, I thought they might have, it looked to me as if there was an old keel they'd taken out of it.
It is, it's an old keel, and they're building a new one down Streeter and Mail for the culture pearly.
They're putting it, yes.
Oh, that's so.
Who were the boat builders around here? Were they local white men?
Well, in the first place, all our luggers were built down in Fremantle. Brown's boat building yard, Lawrence's, or on somebody else. And then they eventually started up here. I built 2 luggers up here.
Did you?
Oh, yeah. I had a carpenter, and I was 2 good luggers too.
Did you do any building yourself, or did you just sort of supervise?
Oh, I wouldn't know the first thing about it.
They just supervised and told them what he wanted.
You might ask me to make a plum pudding.
Isn't that, what were the wood do they use for the luggers?
Red mangrove.
Red mangrove. Is that cut locally here?
Oh, it's all around the creeks, you know.
Is it?
The white mangrove is no good.
Is it?
There's 2 species, you see.
I wouldn't have thought the mangrove trees were big enough.
Oh, well, you see, it was cut and then stacked, and when it got partially dry, it made the best fire, but it lasted long and gave greater heat than any other wood they could get here.
Is that so? And they used that for building the boats? They didn't use that for building the boats, though, did they? What did they build the boats out of? Red that?
Oh, they built it out of jarrah planking, you know, and
I see.
mostly, and then there was, most of them then were copper sheathed,
Ah.
you know, to keep up the waterline.
Ah. Do they do that now?
Oh, well, there's no building going on now.
No.
They
These
would
ones
do
aren't
it,
copper sheathed,
but
are they?
some of them discarded the using of copper sheeting on account of its expense, and in its place they used copper paint, which had to be applied about 3 times a year. The idea of that was, of course, it was looked upon a necessity. The worms used to get into the luggers, you see, and that had the effect of stopping them.
And are the luggers that are here today much different to the luggers that were here in your day?
Not when I came here first. Oh, much improved luggers today, larger, and a much improved construction altogether.
Oh, I see. Last longer?
Yes, so when I came here first, they were mostly hand pump boats, and accommodated 6 to 7 men. Now they can have up to 9, you see.
I see. I suppose the accommodation's a bit improved, is it, these
Oh,
days?
yes, in all respects.
I see. And do these boats do they have a bigger draft than the ones that you need deeper water for them?
Yes, yes.
So I still see they can lie over there on their sides on the flats without going to any
Oh, they're
trouble.
stouter built altogether now than they were. See, as I say, they were mostly built just to take the hand pumps.
Yes.
And then when they came in for the engine boats, and then later on engine and that was a engine and compressor, and then later on they put in propellers.
Oh, I see.
So it was advancing all the time.
Yes. Did you have, when you first built luggers, I presume they were just steam, they were just wind propelled, were they? Did they have auxiliary engines?
The first luggers I operated were all just under sail.
Yes.
And later on I had engines put in and built several boats myself.
Oh, I see.
Or had them built,
Yes.
in Broome.
Now you was just saying when you first came here there was a time of a big murder. What was that about?
or what is as well known as the Leiblit murder. He was a pearl buyer here, and a couple of unworthies among the pearling crew accosted him one day on the hotel veranda and showed him something that wrapped up in a handkerchief. It was a lemonade stopper. See, and I said, "We've got big pearl here. I'd like to see you tonight." And they arranged to meet on the opposite side of the Roebuck Bay Hotel. He went over there, and they didn't know how much money he had, but they told him he could pay them over there, see. Well, when they got him over there, they bludgeoned him and killed him. And they were arrested in Copenhagen, as a matter of fact. No, they weren't. They were arrested here. And that was another murder or something. Anyhow, they were eventually hung.
I see. Was it a pretty lawless place? Or was it fairly law-abiding on the whole?
Oh, it was really law-abiding. Now and again, there was
A flare-up.
of course, the worst of the lot was the riots in 920, one or whatever it was.
That's what you were telling me about those yesterday. Yes. And did the most of the people who came out, they didn't bring any of their family with them, did they? Most of the indentured labourers.
Oh, no, they weren't allowed to do that.
Oh, I see.
Because they only came in here under indenture. They couldn't
Yes.
bring their families here.
I see. Well, I suppose that'd make for a bit of trouble, being all those men without families and wives.
Well,
Yeah.
they were free to go back after the expiration of
They're gone.
their term.
Mm.
But a lot of them didn't want to go back.
Mm.
And some went back for the simple reason they had family ties in Singapore, or their mother and father were sick or something else, or
I see. Yes.
many reasons. They all had different reasons. I think we'd better put it that way.
Yes, I see. Yeah. Now, you were going to tell me about, your daughter said you had a couple of good stories, and she wrote them down for me, and I've lost a piece of paper. What one was it? Did you remember that one you had started to tell me yesterday about Charlie, and you forgot you forgot it in the middle?
About what?
Wasn't it about Charlie, the one who was simple, the bloke who they got going for the races?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Start him again, because you forgot it in the middle yesterday, and I might as well hear the end of it.
I don't know if I know where I started.
Well,
now.
start it.
It'd probably be different, you know.
Never mind, start again and tell me again about him, because I've...
Charlie, he was he was born in Broome, and he used to live with his mother, and she was a very elderly woman at this particular period, you know. And whatever Charlie did, it was all he also had to go and tell Mother. So there was a murder here at one time, and they couldn't find out anybody who'd seen this murderer ashore. The police got him all right, and he was being tried. I happened to be on the jury at the time, you see, and they badly wanted someone that could prove that they saw him ashore. He said he didn't come ashore. And at last, at the 11th hour, Charlie arrives. And he said, I saw him. I saw him out the common gate. Well, when he came in, the counsel for the defence said to him, "You've come along rather late. When you knew that you'd seen this man, why didn't you come along and tell the police earlier?" He said, "I told Mother."
Dear.
Oh, dear.
Oh, dear. I suppose...
Anyhow, they took his evidence and all that sort of thing. The man was convicted. Spargo was the man.
Mm-hmm.
You've probably read about
What is
Spargo
that?
and the
Yeah.
old-time murders up here.
Mm.
Oh, he was a horrid sort of a man. They reckon he killed 2 others too, but they never went on with it because he was found guilty and sentenced to death and hung.
What was this murder he was sentenced for? Was it who was
It
murdered?
was this pearl buyer here.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, a Jewish pearl buyer.
Ah.
That's the one that he met on the pub friend.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's him. Oh, Charlie came into that story too. I see. Yes. That was interesting. And were there many, well, you said he was a Jewish pearl diver. Were there people of many races here, or mostly just the Asiatics? Or was it a...
Well, when I came to Broome first, there were mostly Malays and Copangas and Saganese. That's from Saigon, you know.
From Saigon, like
Cochin
Vietnam
China, I suppose,
that day, yes.
Cochin China, really,
Yes.
I suppose. And then there wasn't one Japanese employed when I came here first. And they got some Japanese in, and they proved, you know, much superior. You see, the Japanese would look ahead, and he didn't just live for today. He looked to the future and lived for the future. The Malay and Copangas, they just thought for today, you know. All they thought of, they have a good day today, and never thought about the future like the Japanese did. The result was the Japanese got a controlling interest in the pearling by their increasing numbers, eventually driving the others practically out of it.
No. Ah. And so, by the time of the Second World War, it had been mostly Japanese here.
Oh, a big lot, yes.
Yeah, you were saying
Of
you
course,
were...
they were all interned
Yes, I see.
and sent over to Adelaide.
Mm.
The whole lot of them.
And what happened to the pearling fleet itself during the war? The boats?
The First War, they were all laid up.
Mm.
You couldn't, there was no use pearling then during the First War. You couldn't sell any shell. As a matter of fact, we had somewhere about 100 ton of shell here packed and stored in the goods sheds, and the government advanced money on it, you know, and then held the shell, but there was nothing you could do about it.
Mm.
That's the shell I told you about. It was eventually all shipped home to London and sold at the auctions in one fell swoop. Eh? And the result was it bought very low prices because the dealers, that's the buyers, put their heads together and they, you know,
Pushed it down.
bought it and then, you know, settled the quantities amongst themselves after. The result was that nearly everybody got very big debit notes. I know, I got one for 2,000 quid.
What, you lost on the whole
Lost,
thing by the
yes.
time
I
I went
had
over there?
Yes. I got £180 advance on the shell in the first place. And then the finish, I owed somewhere about 2,000 quid.
That was for transport and costs and commission and... Gee, well,
Luckily, the government forgave us. I realised, you know, nothing could be done about it. And nobody could afford to repay that.
I see. Oh, it's marketed by the government.
Yeah.
You didn't have to pay the 2,000.
Well, it was all sent to London
Yes,
and
I
sold
see.
in London, you know, but
Yes.
it was all sold at one fell swoop.
Yeah, I see.
Oh, we had a devil of a job for a long time there. The government tried at last. They decided there was no use going on, so they wiped the thing clear.
What had you done to maintain yourselves during the war then, if you couldn't go pearling?
We certainly didn't do any pearling during the First War, but there was a lot of movement up here, troops passing through and going up overland, you know, and all that sort of thing.
I see.
And a movement of people. Stations had to be run. You couldn't close those down.
No, I see. So the shops and things still.
Oh, they carried on to, you know, one or two of them closed, but
You didn't have your shop then, though, did you?
no, I didn't. I only had an office then. And that's in the first floor.
Yeah.
I only had an office.
And were you still agent for the coat hangers then?
Yeah.
How do you mean agent? Did you arrange for them to come over and take a commission sort of thing? Did you? Was that how does that work? You said you were agent for bringing over the coat hangers.
Well, you see, every boat has to have a crew.
Yeah.
And we were privileged to use indentured labourers, you see. There's no other industry in Australia that's allowed to use that. We were a privileged class up here those days.
Yeah.
Well, for one reason, you couldn't get white men to go out on the luggers and work under the conditions it was necessary for those men to work.
Yeah.
And at the pay that the industry could afford. Because Shell only brought a certain price, and sometimes even then it barely paid with the low wages we could get these men for. So it was a difficult problem altogether. And anyhow, the government, they didn't like giving us the privilege of using this labour, you know. There was a lot of hostility about it in certain, departments. But after a while it was realised the industry would either have to close down or use indentured labour.
I see.
So they thought it was in the best interest to allow the indentured labour to come in, and brought a lot of wealth into the country. They were selling the shell all overseas. It brought in a few £1 million, you know.
And was Broome the main centre? I know they used to sell it at Cossack Earl. They used to.
Well, originally Cossack was the centre of the pearling, but it shifted up to Broome eventually.
Pearl better up here, is it? The shell better?
Yes.
Cossack's just a deserted ghost town now.
Oh, yeah, I suppose it is.
Few buildings. Half of the 6 or 7.
Long time since I've been there.
Yeah, we came there a few weeks ago. 6 or 7 big stone buildings falling into disrepair.
Oh, it used to be the hub of the universe down there at one time.
Nothing. It's been a big town, you know. I mean, nothing like Broome. Broome's a bit ramshackle, but these were all solid stone buildings.
Oh, my word, yeah.
They looked as if they thought they were going to last forever.
Well, of course, Broome went through a rough time during the wars, you know.
Yes.
See, the population diminished, the shore population. Of course, they carried on pearling in the Second World War. But
What happened to all the crews of the luggers in the First World War when the ships were laid up?
what?
The crews of those luggers, what did they do when they were laid up? Did they go home during the war, or did they stay here, or?
Oh, a lot of them stayed here, but a lot of them, a lot of the luggers were taken over by the Army and the Navy. See, and they were jolly glad to have the crews.
Oh, I see.
Now, I had 4 luggers then, and the Army took those over, or the Navy, I forget which now. I think the Navy took, no, I had 6 luggers. The Navy took 4, and the Army took 2. And they were jolly glad to have the crews.
Oh, I see. What did they do with them?
It was jolly awkward if they didn't have the crews, as a matter of fact.
Use them for reconnaissance work, did they? What did they use them for? What did they use them for?
Oh, well, when a Navy's at work, they want all sorts of small craft, you know, for different operations ashore.
Yes, I see. Round the coast. I suppose these men knew the coast.
Oh, they were sorry they weren't war lawyers.
That was in the First World War.
Yeah.
Yes, I see. And then, I mean, you sort of, and then after the war, you got back into operation again, did you?
Yes, the luggers were brought back. Some of them, a lot of them never came back.
Did you get yours back?
No, I figured whether I did or not now.
I suppose they paid you for them, did they?
Oh, yes. Oh, we had to go to court over it.
Oh, did you?
What they offered us, we wouldn't accept. And then we got a judgment, saying a certain price and we appealed against that, and we won it.
Oh, I see.
So we got the price we asked for. They offered us, I think, about £700 in the first place, and we eventually got 1,800.
And what would they have cost you? What would they have been worth?
Well, to build a new lugger again, it had cost us, with engines in it, it cost us that. I'm talking about having engine and compressor.
Yes, I see. Oh, well, you got it just about square
Oh,
in the end.
we got what it cost us to replace them.
I see. And I suppose it took you a while. Would the markets have been all upset? The markets have been...
Oh, it took a long time, yes. As I told you before, we had all that shell unsold.
Yes, that's right.
And it was a difficult thing to start fishing new shell. And as soon as we started fishing new shell, the dealers wouldn't touch the old shell that we had stored.
Yes.
I know they said they wanted all new shell. So we had no difficulty selling the new shell, but the shell that had been fished pre-war was still stored and eventually sold, as I said before, at
A loss.
sacrifice.
Yeah. I see there's cases of shell down there on the jetty now waiting to go out. Where do they go? Where do we sell shell to these days?
Well, you'd have to have a look and see the destination for it on them. Some goes to London, some goes to Germany, some goes to America, some goes to Japan.
What do they use it for? Still make a certain number of pearl shell buttons, do they? And
Well, it all went into buttons before.
yeah, I know.
About 80% of it went into the small buttons.
Like
buttons
that.
like this. But plastic came and knocked all that out. You see, that's a plastic button.
Yeah.
You can see that. So.
It's just sort of imitation pearl shell. It's got a shine about it.
It's really hard to beat the plastic buttons. First of all, the only fault against them in the first place was in hot water. They crinkled and, they weren't a success. But they've overcome that now.
Oh, it's not bad.
See, these are in hot water. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's a nice button, isn't it?
Yes, it's a nice button. And they use it for, I see they use a bit for ornamental sort of souvenirs and jewellery and this sort of thing a little bit.
That was the last refuge of the MOP shell, really.
Was it? Yes.
A lot of it now is used in church ornaments and things like that. The true pearl shell.
And I believe that up at Beagle Bay they've got a church there all decorated
all
with
pearl
it.
shell.
I'll have to go and see
At
that.
night time it looks really nice.
Is it? Yes.
Yes, a priest called Father Drosty was responsible for that. He came out here and he put years in doing all that sort of thing, and I said, at night time when the church is lit up, it looks really nice.
Yes, it looked. I saw a picture of it. It looked lovely. And were there many? In such a colourful town, were there many characters? This town looks colourful even now to southern eyes. Was there a lot of?
Oh, we had any amount of those,
Yeah.
There was always a few knocking about, and like Charlie, I told you before.
Yeah.
I think I told you about sandpapering his feet, did I?
That's right, to make him go faster. Yes.
They reckon he had too much under. What do you call it again? Too much. What would you call it? Under something.
Undercarriage.
Too much. Over. It's not over. It's not weight. There's some other words for it. Too much.
Not.
I can't think of the word. I couldn't think of it.
Not ballast. Not ballast.
Oh no.
It was ballast.
It was too thick, I reckon it made his feet too heavy.
Dear.
So they sandpapered the poor beggar. There they had them standing in hot water while they're having their dinner, and then just to go over and feel, he says, my word's a little bit hot. They say to other, oh, he's a bit hot on this leg, Joe, whatever it is. Oh, get him to stand on the other one for a while. That's how Charlie had said. Oh,
What was the did the various communities keep themselves separate, or did they? I mean, for instance, did the Malays stick to the Malays and the Japanese, or was there a fairly wide mixing of people? Did you all sort of live your own?
you mean on the luggers?
No, I just mean in the town. What was life like in the town, sort of thing?
Oh, well, the Japanese had their own boarding houses,
Yes.
and the Malays had theirs.
Mm.
And very seldom there was any trouble.
Mm.
They got on well because they had to mix out on the pearling ground, you know. And not only that, the pearling, the owners themselves of the pearling luggers had their establishments ashore to house all their crews.
Oh, I see.
There.
And they lived. And what did they do for relaxation? I mean, when they used to gamble a lot, I suppose, did they?
Oh, they were great gamblers.
Were they?
And the authorities didn't interfere with them very much because they reckoned, well, if they stopped them gambling, they'd only probably get into some other mischief that would be worse than gambling, you see.
Yeah.
So they let them out as long as they didn't overdo it. Oh, it was common sense, the action of the authorities.
Someone told me that they used to have a big gambling school up here, and that the police would take no notice as long as it was just the Asians. But if a white man went in there, they'd arrest him. Do you remember that?
Oh, I never heard of that.
It's probably just folklore and stories.
No, I never heard of that.
And
As a matter of fact, I never heard of a white man going in there
oh, I see.
because they wouldn't be allowed in.
Yes.
I think it was understood, that they had to play amongst themselves.
Yeah.
Well, then they had their heads arranged and all that sort of thing. If anybody wanted to come in, it was all done openly. The windows are all open. You could see them.
Okay.
If you're going past, you could stop and just have a gaze in.
What did they play?
Or some Oriental game. I forget what they
Oh, I
called.
see. They didn't play two-up or anything?
And some other game.
Yes, okay. And what most of the white people in the town, I suppose, would have been the business people, would they, or working in the shops? I mean, what were the white people, with most of the, if the pearling was done by the Japanese and the coat hangers, what would the white people have mostly done? Were they more in the shops and that, or were they
we had a lot of shell openers here.
Mm-hmm.
As I told you, in the first
right,
war, we sent 250 men to the first war.
Did you?
That wasn't a bad effort for a place
No.
like this.
No.
We sent none in the second war because there was hardly so few here.
What was the population of in the First World War time? About?
There were about 6,000 altogether.
Would that-
All colours.
All colours. And would that be the highest it ever was? Has it been higher than that?
No, I don't think it has.
That was about the
I
peak
think
of the
about
time.
1913, I would say. But it's a funny thing. In the first year of the war, that would be 1915. What was it? 914.
14.
914. We produced more shell that year than we've ever produced in any one year.
Really? Oh, it was a better year, was it?
We
What would contribute to that?
15. Well, the men just worked and
Got onto good beds.
they had to get a lot of shell because the payment was very low.
Yes, I
See,
see.
we didn't know whether we were going to sell the shell or how long it take to sell it, and
Didn't have any marketing
everything was
boards.
so uncertain.
Yeah. Didn't have any marketing boards or anything in those days.
Oh yes.
You had a marketing board, did you?
Well, we had that Pearls Association
Yes.
and all that sort of thing. And we had an agent in London, and they kept us advised.
You didn't have any guaranteed price like they do on the wheat or anything these days.
Oh no! Well, they couldn't do anything because the trouble was, before the war, we used to ship shell to London on a through bill of lading. That's go to Singapore, transship into a boat for London or New York at 60 shillings a ton of 40 cubic feet. It went up to £90.
What, the transport?
The transport.
£90. When was that?
The outbreak of the first war, when we shipped some shell to America, thinking we might do all right, you know. Well, when it was sold, only a portion was sold because there was accidents on the way over across the American continent. It was landed on the west coast, you see, and had to be sold in New York. And the shell got spilt and cases broken, and a lot of the shell got lost, you know. That's terrible time.
Yeah, well, it's been a bit of a pioneering industry. It was always a little bit hard pressed, the industry, was it?
Oh, in the early days, it was
Yes,
hard pressed. The prices were low, and the difficult was, you see, as the boats increased, we never had the divers for them.
No, even you couldn't get them after a while.
Oh, a diver takes a couple of years, you know.
Oh, I see.
Mate, he starts off scratch.
Yes.
He's got to learn all the rudiments about it in the first place. And the first year he probably shows very, very poor results.
Ah, I see.
And so after the second year he starts to improve, but after that he's classed as a diver.
I see. And then he might have to go home then if he.
See, eventually, of course, you had signed on a man as a try diver. Well, the diver would pick him. Well, then the diver, then when he wanted a rest, he'd put the other man down, you see, and from the rudiments of everything. Well, after 12 months of that work out there, or we'll say a season out there, he became fairly efficient. The second year, well, he came quite proficient enough to sign on as a second diver, you know, for the next year.
I see. Now, how long, is there an off season when you don't go out?
Oh, well, we acknowledge that.
How the divers were paid again, if they...
Well, they signed on first of all at a flat rate, so much a ton, see, and it increased as the take a shell increased. You know what I mean?
Yes, but every will increase for the whole catch, sort of thing. Yes.
Oh yes. Now we'll say for argument's sake, they sail on a £20 a ton. See. It all depends, of course, whether it's a hand pump boat or a engine equipped boat. Well, if he got over, we'll say 10 ton, that was up to 10 ton, we'll say. If he got 11 ton, he'd get probably £22 a ton for the lot instead of 20.
I see.
Okay. And as it went up then, so his lay, the payment on that shell was called lay, diver's lay. He'd get an increase. So some of them there got up to, it got so high at one time, the diver got nearly £50 a ton out of it.
And how much would you have been selling it for, marketing it for?
Probably might have been in those days £200 a ton.
I see, and then you had to pay your expenses and
Oh, we had to
shipping
pay
out of
everything,
there.
yeah.
Yes, I see. Yeah, oh, what must have been when that was at the time when
Well,
the industry was booming.
He had to get
Yes.
the shell.
The industry was booming then. That was a pretty high, good.
Well,
You're paying well.
I suppose some people would call it booming. The poor old Master Furler didn't call it.
No, I see.
So
He was
the
always...
divers did, well, they did all right out of it.
Yeah.
It didn't matter whether the owner lost money or not.
Was everyone in the ship on a different lay?
Oh, well, only the divers got
Only
the
the
lay.
divers got... Oh, I asked...
The tenders got wages,
They
you
got
see.
wages.
But they would increase as the taker shell increased.
I see.
See? A tender would sign on, we'll say for argument's sake, at what did I say, £6 a month.
Mm.
Well, if the boat got over a certain quantity of shell, it'd go up to £7 a month. And if it's still over another, still a further quantity, he'd get £8, or he might get up to £10 a month.
Yes, they
on
talk.
a sliding scale.
I see. This was the same for everybody, or just the tender? Did the other people on the ship get a sliding scale too?
The crews very seldom got. Only the tender, the first and second tender, the engine boy, and the diver himself.
Oh, I see. Yes, and whaling.
There was the two divers, the tri-diver, the first and second tender, and the engine boy. There were 6 skilled men on board. Well, you only had the very often for a long, long time. You only had 2 crews. Eventually, we got the third. So that made on an engine boat with double connection. That's engine double connection. We have to up to 9 men.
Yeah, see, on whaling ships, they go on lays, whaling, but everybody on the ship gets a lay. They don't have straight wages, so they might come back after a season's whaling with no money, or a very big money. It's a bit different in your industry. What did you mean when you said before that the pearling was a bit of an immoral? It wasn't a very moral industry.
Well, for the simple reason, as I told you before, 2 friends would be playing cards together, and one of them would find out a bit later on that the other fella had his emissary out there and bought a pearl off his boat, and all that sort of thing. That was right. Oh, that was, done quite openly.
Was it?
Yes, of course, the man to tell me, he said, no, I never saw the pearl. No, I never bought it. My man, if he bought it for himself, he never gave it to me. And of course, there's one thing about those coloured men there, that they never put the show away. They wouldn't admit this or they wouldn't admit that. Did your master know you had that pearl? No. Oh, no.
And it was a bit, I suppose, once one person started doing this, everybody had to do it to stay in business, more or less.
Well, it was right, there's no doubt about it. It was right.
I suppose it was hard for anybody to keep out of it.
I myself. I was pearling for many years. I never bought a snide, and I was never offered one.
Weren't you?
Never offered one.
I suppose they...
Now, don't say if I'd have been offered one, I'd have bought it. But I think they knew jolly well that I...
Yes.
Of course, I was Secretary of the Pearlers Association a long time, and we were always trying to fathom out how we could block it and stop it, you see. And of course, I'd be the last one that anybody had approached to offer them a...
Same. I see. So it was a sort of a pretty curly industry, I suppose, from honesty point of view. And did they ever catch many of these pearl thieves, or was it just? I mean, would you often see somebody go to prison for stealing a pearl?
Well, very hard to prove it, because the buyer would never split on them, and there was one case here at one time, but nothing came of it. I just had to grin and bear it. And it'd take too long to try and explain it all to you, because there were too many ramifications and too many in it.
I suppose by the time everybody had a cut, nobody'd make very much out of it anyway.
Oh, well, the man he might be your tender, he might be a member of the crew. Everybody didn't employ a wide shell opener, but they were the worst of the lot, any other wide shell openers, in my opinion. They were, honestly.
Yeah.
I remember once, I think I told you before, one of my wide shell openers took a trip to Singapore and lived like a fighting cock and had money to spend galore, but I couldn't afford to go to Singapore. And I was the owner of the lugger.
And so really, you know, most of the, yes, they're a nuisance, those mosquitoes, aren't they?
Yeah.
Really, most of the master pearlers would have had some other business interest as well to tide them over bad seasons, and the pearling was only a part-time sort of a thing.
With some of them.
Yes, I see.
See, but some of the pearlers here, they only had probably one boat. And there were several there, they'd go out on their own boats, be their own shell opener.
Do their own shell opening. They might have got more out of it than... At least they'd know where the pearls went.
And some of them were they'd go out there for 12 months and only get berry, never get a good pearl.
So,
It was under the up and hill game all the time.
they'd only get what?
Berry.
What's berry?
That's misshapen pearls.
Oh, I see. And they're no good.
Oh, well, it all depends. You've got to grade that, you know. You'll get one pearl, and you'll probably have a cup full of berry.
Yes.
You know, misshapen pearls, and probably not good skin and all that sort of thing, with a lot of defects most of it had, you see. Then it'd be graded. The first class barrack, the second class barrack, and all that sort of thing.
What would they use that for? Sort of artificial jewellery?
Some were very good. Yeah.
Were they? Some were nicely attractive.
They used to make mostly for brooches. They were.
Ah, yes, that's what I've seen those.
Put them in brooches and clasps and things like that.
Yes, I see. And was that done here, or did it all go overseas to be made up into jewellery?
Oh, it all went overseas. There's nothing done here of any. Although we had a real good. Nearly all the pearls were cleaned here. You know, if they had a blemish, we had the champion. I don't suppose he had a peer in the world. Chap named Ellies, son of the Ellies that's in Broome today. Father, I mean, of the...
Oh, there's an Ellie's on the wharf. Down there is the wharfinger or something. The sister Harbour and Lights. There's a man named Ellie's on the Harbour and Lights, that's right. I see. And he was a pearl opener, pearl cleaner.
Well, I don't think... I think he's a son of the... he's a grandson, he'd be.
I see.
He'd be a grandson.
And his grandfather was a pearl cleaner. They used to... What do they call them?
A pearl cleaner.
Pearl cleaner, I see.
So you come in... the pearl very often, as you see it, would have seen it later, wasn't like that when it was fished first. It had a blemish or a dirty skin. Probably they'd take a skin off. Like an onion.
Yes.
You'd have to peel it, you'd have to peel it off.
What was a little knife?
And then that wasn't, still left a blemish, you have to peel another one off. It may be, say, 50 grains in the first place. When you take the first one off, it'll come down to 40 grains. Not good enough to take another. That'll come down then to 30 grains. But at a good pearl probably, you see. But when it had a blemish and all that sort of thing, the price suffered accordingly. Sometimes a buyer would use his discretion and say, oh, I think that'll clean well, all that. I'll take the risk of that, and I'll get it. I'll do the cleaning, I'll take the risk. He'd buy it, and sometimes he'd score, and other times he wouldn't. I were the mosquitoes about there, and I dropped a tin the other day on the floor, a tin like this. I must have thrown it away this morning. And do you know the thing burst?
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, with a heat or something?
Yes, a long tin, and good stuff. I only just bought it, and I forgot to get one today. That was yesterday that happened.
Oh, I see. That's yes, isn't it? Yeah, and so who would you say have made the most money in the end out of the pearl industry? What group of the buyers or the openers, the divers?
Well, I suppose the diver made the most as far as we were concerned. He certainly he got his board free throughout the year. He was under very little expense, and he got, particularly in the closing years, he got very good pay and all that sort of thing. Well, then again, when the buyer bought the shell, he had to market it, and it was pretty expensive handling, but he got very big prices for it as a rule.
Did you sell yours through a buyer, or did you sell yours just send it?
I did both. I sold shell here, I sent it to London
Yeah.
on consignment to
Yeah.
be sold at the bi-monthly auctions,
Mm-hmm.
and I sold it, sent it to New York to an agent.
Ah, I see.
But on the whole, I've over the years, I think it was preferable to sell your shell here if you got anywhere near a price that showed a profit.
I see.
To sell it. You never knew what was going to happen. Sometimes you'd grade your shell here, and when I got home to London, it'd be all graded again into different piles and all that sort of thing. Then you had to pay for all that, see? Oh, it was very expensive selling in London, so London fell out of it altogether in the finish.
Yeah.
And New York got the lot.
I see.
But,
They didn't buy any
I don't
major.
think we could have carried on in any case because they wouldn't pay the price, and you couldn't stop the cost of production going up. Yeah, well, no matter how we tried everything because it was the wages were on a rising level all the time, and the proceeds we got from our pearl shell didn't, compensate by any means.
Well, I suppose really, if the most of the pearlers themselves didn't go out, they were more like businessmen, you'd have sort of you wouldn't have had very much to do with your cruise net, would you? I mean, you employed them yourself?
I employed them, but you got to understand this, you see. The lugger was it was a big boat that was 15 ton in those days. 14 and 15 ton. Some of them were only 12 ton, 13 ton, say. Well, you had to have 6 or 7 crew. And the bigger boats there with the 2 divers on, up to 9 crew altogether. Well, all you had was the after part of the boat, like down the companionway in the cabin, where the 2 divers slept and the shell opener.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Well, then the rest of the crew slept forward down the hold.
Uh-huh.
There wasn't much room, you know.
No, there wouldn't
It was
be.
a dog's life, really.
And did they sleep, and as the hole filled up with pearl shell, they just slept on top of the pearl, did they? On top of the shell? I mean, but where did you put the pearl? You put the pearl shell in the
Well,
hole?
you put it under the floor.
Ah.
You put it on the floor in the cabin. So you went down the cabin, you see. Well, you'd have a carpet down in the cabin where